Hamlin University political science professor David Schultz joining us right now.
Sure.
David, you said right here on Sunday night that it would be Romney winning, Ron Paul coming in second.
Right.
And then all of a sudden people started talking about how wide that margin of victory had to be for it to really be considered a win for Romney. Was it wide enough here?
It was pretty good, but not as much as some people thought. Some people were thinking he'd be in the 40s. I mean, it's still a good victory, but what he didn't do here was really sort of dismiss or get rid of some people, such as, Ron Paul, for example. So an okay victory, but certainly not a spectacular one in terms of being able to knock out lots of people, such as his closest rivals.
Yeah, and there's a lot of information out there already because
Right.
people are just jumping on, trying to analyze this because we have so much longer to go in the process. South Carolina coming up.
Sure.
Some of the exit polling that I was just looking at talks about the comparisons between what we saw in Iowa and what we saw in New Hampshire. In New Hampshire, we have a much more affluent crowd, much less socially conservative, but still a lot of anxiety in these voters about the economy and about jobs, and still these people gravitated towards the Romney camp.
Yes, no question about it. And I think they did that for a couple of reasons. One is for the reasons we mentioned before. Former Massachusetts governor, very familiar there. Second, he's probably perceived, because of his business background, as being perhaps a little bit better than some of the other social conservatives in terms of being able to address the economic issues. And so I would suspect that explains part of it. I think also, come back to what you said, this is not the same type of state as Iowa. It is maybe economically conservative, but certainly not socially conservative.
Well, what about the other guys that finished further down the tier? Santorum didn't exactly do what he did in Iowa here. Newt Gingrich spent a lot of money on attack ads, at least the PACs that support him did.
Right.
And they apparently didn't do enough to get him any closer to Mitt Romney. What happens to them? And John Huntsman.
Okay, well,
What happens to the money?
What happens to the money?
Yeah.
A waste of money.
A lot of waste of money. Okay, first off, right off the bat, Huntsman's, I think, one of the biggest losers for tonight, in the sense that he was really counting on hitting a home run. He at least needed a second place on this one. He didn't get it. He does not look good going into South Carolina.
Yeah, he bet it all.
Yeah, he bet it all. I mean, he basically, rolled everything on this one. So in South Carolina, it's not his kind of a state. The kind of state South Carolina is again for social conservatives. And so clearly, I think he's one of the biggest losers, and he may not be able to go much farther. Now, Rick Perry also came at the bottom of the heap, but no one expected him to do well. I would say at this point that, again, the two people that are really sort of the winners again on this one clearly are Romney, but more importantly, Ron Paul, in the sense that he continues to hang on, and he becomes, even though the Republicans don't want to say it, he really is the main alternative to Romney at this point.
Yeah, and sets him up, or maybe somebody in his family, pretty well for 2016, I guess, too, doesn't it?
It perhaps does.
Yeah,
but
maybe. But we're not talking about that just yet. If you had to call it, would you say Mitt Romney is now much more than the presumptive nominee? I mean, he's the guy.
Yeah, barring any kind of strange things happening, he's got the nomination at this point because he's still leading in South Carolina. He's going to do very well in Florida. He has the money and the resources to do it. The question, I think, the biggest challenge for him now is, going back to Ron Paul, is that if they don't find some way to keep Ron Paul in the Republican Party, he's running as a third-party candidate.
Absolutely.
At that point,
And
it's
there
all
goes.
over.
Yeah,
it's all
right.
over. It's all over for the Republicans.
All right, David Schultz, as always, thanks so much.
Thanks,
Of course,
David.
you're welcome.